G'day everyone and welcome to another video for the Legal Studies Guide, where today we are looking at Unit 3, Area of Study 1, Key Knowledge Point 1. So first up off the bat, our quote today from H. Jackson Brown Jr., "The best preparation for tomorrow is doing your best today." And I think this is one that rings really true for any VCE subject and Year 12 in general, is that often as a teacher I get asked about, what's the best way to prepare for this, or what's the best way to get ready for the exam, or what's the best way to get ready for your SAC, and it's to start doing stuff today. Today is the best day to start. We are looking at area or Unit 3, Area of Study 1.1 today, which are the principles of justice: fairness, equality, and access. Why these are really important is if we look particularly at skill 3.1.10 that we'll have to do at the end of this unit. This whole unit builds up to us needing to evaluate the ability of the criminal justice system to achieve the principles of justice. Obviously, for those who aren't aware, and we'll cover it later on, evaluating requires us to look at the positives and negatives, and then come to a value judgment on how good something is. So effectively, at the end of this unit, we will have to look at our criminal justice system and decide whether it actually achieves the principles of justice or not. So we'll need to know things in our criminal justice system that help us achieve the principles of justice, and things in our criminal justice system that don't help us achieve it. But obviously, the starting point is we need to know what they are, hence our essential question today. What are the principles of justice, and how does our legal system promote them? Well, as we just said there, our principles of justice are fairness, equality, and access. One of the important things in legal studies is, no doubt you're going to get a question asking you to explain these directly. It's not one of the skills in the study design. But if you're asked to explain what the principle of fairness means, you can't actually use the word fair. You need to use different words. So this is where, if we look at the definitions of what these words mean, we can start making sure they're words that we can use in an answer. So with fairness, we are looking at the idea, and our key word here is impartiality. So fairness is impartial and just treatment without favoritism or discrimination. So if you're treated fair in our criminal justice system, you're treated without any bias, you're treated without any discrimination, you're treated impartially. Equality, you might notice a little problem here. We can't say equality is the state of being equal, okay? Because you can't use the same word to describe a word, and this is a common thing across legal studies. So a simple change we can make there is equality is the state of being the same, especially in status, rights, or opportunities. Okay? So one of the things we look at really early on, for example, is the rights of victims and the rights of the accused. That's something that in the criminal justice system, different accused people are treated the same, different victims are treated the same. So that's an example of equality. Finally, the direct definition of access is the means or opportunity to approach or enter a place. So a really literal definition. What this means in our criminal justice system is twofold. You need to have, I suppose we'll call it the understanding. So that's access in a mental sense. You need to be able to go into a criminal trial, a criminal courtroom, and you need to be able to understand what's going on. Obviously, something that helps with access there is having a legal professional with you who can explain those things to you. But there's also the physical aspect of access, so the means, opportunity, to enter a place, actually having courtrooms available. So For example, it would be silly if the only courts in Victoria were based in Melbourne, because then people wouldn't have access to them. So that's where we talk about a court hierarchy and having magistrates' courts in most towns. I imagine in the towns you live in, there'd be a magistrates' court, potentially a county court if you're from a bigger town like Geelong or Ballarat, and obviously a county court in Melbourne and the Supreme Court as well. So how does our criminal justice system actually promote these? What would be a great opportunity now is if you've done year 11 legal studies, would be to pause the video and see if you can come up with some ideas yourself. If you haven't, keep it rolling, and we'll have a look in our next slide now about different ways. So pause it now if you're going to do this yourself. Otherwise, we'll move on. Fairness. So remember, fairness was about impartiality. So just a few things to start thinking about and demonstrate this in our criminal justice system. Fairness is obviously promoted through the impartial role of the judge. The fact that there are strict rules of evidence and procedure mean that everyone or every accused person is subject to the same rules. It means there is no favoritism towards an accused person or the prosecution, which means that you're treated impartially. And obviously the legal rights of the accused and victim come in here, and we'll understand them in more depth to see the impartiality aspect. Equality, you could take those legal rights of an accused and victim over there as well, because it means that each accused person and each victim is treated the same. Strict rules of evidence and procedure are applied equally to both parties. There is a jury, which ensures for all indictable offences, which means, and you have to have it, which means all accused people are treated equally. And if you feel like the result, and appeal avenues could definitely work over here as well, if you feel like the result of your trial is as a result of being treated without equality or without fairness, there are appeal avenues that you can take. Finally, access legal aid and community legal centres, so you can get that legal representative to help you with your understanding of what's going on. The fact that victims can give evidence as vulnerable witnesses enables them to physically access the courtroom without, I suppose, feeling any fear or trauma. And pretrial procedures are all about information, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on as well. Just to go into each of these in a little bit more detail, as I said, fairness, impartial and just treatment without favouritism or discrimination. So that means you are not going to be discriminated against based on, say, your gender, your cultural background or your race. So that's also where we talk about having interpreters and things like that, which helps with access, or your sexuality. You will be presumed innocent until proven otherwise in 95 or the majority of circumstances. There are a couple where that presumption is flipped around, and you will know the evidence against you. You won't be ambushed in trial. Okay, so that's about fair treatment. Fairness doesn't mean everyone is treated the same. Sometimes the legal system needs to treat people slightly differently in order for it to be fair, and we'll look at some examples of that throughout this unit. Okay, so just bear that in mind. And we'll look at equality before we unpack that a little bit more. So the equality is the state of being the same, especially in status, rights, or opportunities. Regardless of your social standing, the law applies to everyone. Rules apply to both parties in a balanced way. And processes and procedures are the same for all parties from case to case. Committal hearings are run in the same way. Any directions hearings that happen are run in the same way. The trial always follows the same procedure, etc. If we look at this cartoon, this is what we were saying before, that fairness doesn't mean everyone's treated exactly the same. So this picture, to ensure a fair selection, you all get the same test. You must all climb that tree. Now, if we look at it, climbing that tree is going to be good for the cat. I mean, maybe for the elephant. Like, it can touch the top of the tree, can't necessarily climb it. It's going to be great for the monkey, great for the bird. And if it's a tree frog, probably okay. But this does not suit our seal or our fish at all. So whilst this might be fair, it's definitely not, while this might be equal, and this is where we look at the difference between the two words, and it's an equal selection, you all get the same test, it's most certainly not fair, because it's an impossible test for some of the members. So this is where we look at the idea that we need to make sure that our criminal justice system is equal and fair, and that's only a little small window there, because there's a chance that things will be equal but not fair, or fair but not equal. Great example of this is the existence of a Koori court for Koori offenders. Now, there could be a big argument there that having a Koori court is really fair for Koori offenders, but it's not equal, because it's a special court just for Koori offenders that non-Koori offenders are not able to access. On the other side of the coin, if you didn't have a Koori court and everyone was treated the same, you'd say that's equal, but not fair, because Koori offenders have different cultural understandings of how the legal system works. They have different barriers to justice. And as a result, they wouldn't be getting a fair outcome. They'd be discriminated against based on their culture in our court system. So that's an example of something that could go both ways. And it makes our legal system fair, but not necessarily equal. Okay? And we'll have a look at a few more examples of that throughout this area of study. Finally is access. As I said, the means or opportunity to enter a place, but it's both mental and physical. So you should have physical access to dispute resolution avenues like courts, but you should also know your legal rights and know how they might resolve a dispute. Okay? So having that understanding of how it works, and that's where legal aid is really important, or community legal centres, to help you know your rights. Your access to the legal system should not be limited by factors such as money, so being able to afford legal representation or afford to pursue a dispute. Should not be barriered by language, barriered by any cultural issues, lack of understanding, delays, illness or disability, etc. So these are some common problems in our legal system that we cover in 3.1.13, which are issues and factors that affect our legal system. How expensive it is, the time it takes. But the whole idea of access is our legal system shouldn't be limited by those things. Just some of those things that I mentioned before. Obviously, we need to evaluate the criminal justice system at the end of this area of study. And those things that I've already mentioned, I've put into this table to show you. So things like the impartial role of the judge achieves fairness. The role of the jury achieves equality, legal aid achieves access, etc. And we'll do this after each knowledge dot point and see where they fit into this table. For example, should also include things like the expensive cost of legal representation is perhaps an aspect of our legal system that doesn't achieve access. So what we need to do at the end of this area of study, as I've alluded to and mentioned, is we need to be able to look at both sides. And throughout this entire, or after every knowledge dot point, we'll get great information for both sides. And there's just some examples of things to start with. This is the sort of thing that you might want to draw up a table in the back of your book that covers a full page and be one that you constantly add to throughout the course of the area of study. It wouldn't be a bad idea. We won't look at any, I won't link you to any cases today. That's something we'll do with future knowledge points. But obviously, as we conclude every week, what are the principles of justice and how does our legal system promote them? Can you answer that question? I'd recommend you try and answer it now. And if not, seek out your future resources, send me a message or similar.